Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carolyn, and in this video I'm going to be talking about 10 indie eyeshadow brands that I would like to try. I'm going to be doing this ranking style from the ones I kind of want to try the least. I still want to try them, but the least to the ones I want to try the most, and all the palettes I want to try from them. So I'm going to be talking about 39 eyeshadow palettes total. So if that sounds interesting to you, then just keep on watching. I have to give credit for this video idea to my girl Brittany from Brittany Rare Beauty. I've talked about her on my channel before, but if you haven't, definitely check her out. I will have her information linked down below. She does amazing reels on Instagram. I love her eyeshadow looks that she does. I'm actually wearing one of her an eyeshadow look that she did. It's from the Tiny Marvels palette. I'll put a picture of it on the screen of her look. But yeah, I just kind of replicated it the best I could. But anyway, definitely check her out. She is gorgeous. She's such a sweetheart, and she puts out amazing content. So I highly recommend giving her a follow, subscribing to her YouTube channel. I was talking to her on Instagram because she had already suggested that I do a palettes on my wish list video. I was putting together that wish list and it was over 60 palettes. And I was telling her, well, I probably can't do a video with over 60 palettes. And she suggested that I do like top 10 indie palettes, top 10 neutral palettes, top 10 hyped palettes, top 10, like just a top 10 palettes, but also to do them ranking style. So I plan to make this somewhat of a series. Essentially when I run out of palettes on my wish list is when I will stop, but apparently I have a lot of palettes on my wish list, and that this would be like a fun way to break them down. I don't have any intentions of getting all of these palettes. I had no idea that I had such an extensive wish list until I wrote it all out. That was kind of eye-opening for me. I have about 20 palettes right now. I recently did a ranking video and I had decluttered a couple palettes. So yeah, I have about 20, and that feels kind of like a lot. So this 39 palettes on this wish list is almost double what I have right now. So no way I'm going to be actually getting all of these palettes, but I thought it was just a fun way for me to put out content, as Brittany put it, like talk about eyeshadow palettes without going broke, because I love talking about eyeshadow palettes. I love watching eyeshadow palette videos, and I'm going to be putting up pictures. I should probably scoot over. I'm going to be putting up pictures of the palettes, so we get to talk about palettes on my wish list. We get to look at palettes, and so it should just be a fun time. So I have 39 total palettes to talk about from 10 different indie brands that I want to try, and these are brands that I haven't tried yet. I've tried the indie brands that I have tried are Sydney Grace, Odin's Eye, Juvia's Place, ColourPop, I guess is technically indie, BH at least was indie, Adept Cosmetics. I think that's it. So I've tried those brands, and these are all brands that I haven't tried. There are a lot of other brands I want to try, like Sugar Drizzle, Give Me Glow, Gourmand Girls, Menagerie Cosmetics. There's just a lot of brands that have caught my eye that I want to try, but they just aren't in my like top 10 that I want to try. And I'm not including singles. There's brands that I want to try that do singles that are Terra Moons, Divina, Cleona. Obviously, like, I want to try them, but I'm not ready to try single eyeshadows right now. That's just not a rabbit hole I want to go down at this point in time. Maybe in the future, but right now I'm just kind of avoiding single eyeshadows. I would just rather get palettes. At some point, definitely I want to try singles, but not right now. But anyway, that's enough rambling. Without further ado, let's just get started. So number 10, I have Lethal Cosmetics. And I wanted to try Lethal Cosmetics as a brand, but they mostly do singles. So I just picked from their palettes. I wanted to try the multi. I saw the multi-chrome palettes and those caught my eye, but one's like $150 and one is $100, so those are kind of out of my price range. I don't know if I'll ever try them, but the one that really caught my eye that I do want to try, that I think I can try at some point, is the Night Flower palette. I just really like the color story on that one. It's just kind of like pinky purple, kind of ethereal almost, so that's definitely one I want to try. Number 9 on indie brands I would like to try is Blend Bunny. They would be higher on the list, but I've heard a few negative opinions about their formula and the mattes and the blendability of the mattes and the opaqueness of the mattes, and I'm super picky about my mattes. I need a good matte that blends well. So because of that, they're not as high. But I definitely want to try their palettes at some point. I want to try first their Dollhouse palette because that seems to be the one people like the most. I want to try, and I like the color story of the Dollhouse, like the neutral. It just seems like a really easy format. I also really want to try the Surge palette because it has neons and just a really good color story. I've not actually even tried neon eyeshadows, and I definitely want to try the neons from Surge, I definitely want to try the Surge palette, mostly because of the neons. And I want to try the Blends palette because I've heard from like Batty Bean and a lot of other people that it's just like their go-to rainbow palette, and I feel like it'd be handy to have a rainbow palette. So yeah, I want to try those 3 palettes from Blend Bunny. I definitely want to try them. They're just not on the top of my wish list because I've heard a little bit of mixed reviews. I know that they recently came out with their Primal palette, but I recently watched a video from Keep Beauty Real who reviewed the Primal palette, and I definitely recommend checking her out. I will have her linked down below, but she's a makeup artist and she reviews a lot of palettes, and in my opinion, she gives really honest reviews and definitely goes over the pros and cons and who this palette is good for versus like who might not like it. And based off of her review, though it wasn't overall negative, it wasn't really a negative review at all, it was overall positive, but she kind of convinced me that maybe I don't need this palette. So yeah, I'm gonna skip over that one, but definitely the Blends, Surge, and Dollhouse are on my wish list for sure. Number 8 is Kaleidos. I've heard overall really positive things about the brand. The only negative thing I've heard of is from Makeup with Lainey, who said that the mattes are kind of hard to work with. So if it wasn't for that, Kaleidos would probably be higher up on my wish list, but I still really want to try them. So I probably just start with one and see if I like the formula and then try other ones. So the palettes that I want to try from Kaleidos are number 1, the Flower Punk. I know it's out of stock right now, but I'm not really paying attention to whether or not the palettes are in stock because I'm not trying to buy them right now. So anyway, the Flower Punk, I just really like the packaging, the color story, the whole thing. I think it's cute. I do like palettes for packaging. I've already kind of gone over that in previous videos, but I'm kind of when it comes to palettes, I'm a little bit of a collector. Not excessively because I have 20 palettes. To a lot of people, that's a lot, but to a lot of other people who actually collect palettes, it's not a lot. So Anyway, let's just get back. Escape Pod is the next one that I want. I have seen people do beautiful looks with this palette, and I just like the whole theme of it, the color story. I like the vibe of it, so that's the other palette I want from them. And then they sell their Futurism palettes in a set of 4. So, I mean, those seem kind of cool. Like, I would definitely want to get those. I love the packaging on them. The color stories are cute. So, yeah. But that's everything from Kaleidos that I would want. So, number 7 is Nomad. And this is where I feel like I'm going to butcher some names. So, hopefully I do this okay. I want the Fate de Provence palette. I probably butchered that, but the Provence palette is what I want from them. It's their newest palette. I've seen a lot of people review it, one of them being Brittany Ray Beauty. It looks gorgeous. I definitely want it in my life. Next is the Paradise Islands. I mean, it's Paradise Islands. It just seems like a fun palette. I just imagine being on a beach, in a beach house, putting on my makeup with a pina colada and just chilling, putting on my makeup, which is really unrealistic because I probably wouldn't be traveling with that palette. But anyway, we'll just go with it. I just like the overall vibe of the palette. I don't really have a lot to say about all the reasons why I want the palette. I just like it. So we'll move on from that. Next is the Haunted Europe palette. I just love the tones of the palette. I mean, I love the packaging. We'll just get that out of the way. You're probably gonna hear that more. You are definitely gonna hear that more in this ranking. But yeah, the packaging, just like the spooky vibes, Halloween. I just imagine doing it Halloween time, pulling that palette out, you know, like I have all these visions of me doing my makeup at certain times and certain scenarios. Yeah, anyway, I like the packaging. I like the color story. It seems like a fun palette. It's definitely one I want to try. It's definitely on my wish list. Next is the Cartagena Next is the Cartagena Mágica palette. I don't know if I totally butchered that. I'm really sorry. It's kind of looks like how I would pronounce it. I know its major mispronunciation would be Cartagena Magica. I don't think that's right though. I think it's Mágica. Anyway, this palette is what I'm talking about. Yeah, I just like the tones. Those are just kind of like, I really like that palette. I think it's my kind of color story, something I would wear, something. I just think the theme, I really do like the packaging of Nomad. I think their themes are really fun. Yeah, I just want to try that one. Next is the Tokyo Harajuku palette. Again, the packaging, I mean, the packaging is so freaking cute. I love it. And then the pastels, like I have my Lost in Los Angeles palette, but I could kind of stand to like round it out with another pastel palette. So I think the Harajuku palette would be a good option for that, just to kind of give myself a little bit more pastel options. Anyway, yeah, so that is all of the palettes that I want from Nomad. Next is Melt. Now this brand, their palettes really appeal to me, but I'm also very wary of trying their palettes because I've heard so many mixed opinions about this brand, and I've also heard stories of like mold in people's palettes, which is not something I would want to deal with because I plan on keeping my palettes. yeah, I keep my palettes for packaging purposes, for display and stuff like that. But then also at some point I kind of want to do like my own kind of makeup museum for my own. I would just have, you know, one of those like skinny shelves from, or skinny cases from IKEA with the mirrors, or not the mirrors, the like window, the glass, glass casing, so that it could be protected, you know, from dust and stuff. And I could just have all these palettes, you know, from my past, when I'm thinking like 10-20 years from now, looking back at this time of my palettes. That's a side tangent that we don't need to get into right now. So anyway, back to Melt. And I don't want to get palettes that are gonna have to be thrown out because they're moldy or the shimmers have puffed out of the palette. Like I've seen people that have Insta palette, that some Melt palettes where like the shimmers have just like lifted out and gone everywhere in the palette. So that makes me kind of wary of the brand. So, and then on top of that, people have said that it's really difficult to work with. So I'm not really sure if I'm going to try Melt anytime soon. I don't know. If you have palettes, I mean, they're number 6 on my wish list. So I don't know, maybe it's hard because maybe they should have been number 10. But then some of the palettes, oh, I really want. So if you have tried Melt, let me know. If you have them, if you had palettes for, you know, over 2 years, let me know how, if they've held up for you, or like what you think about them, if they're worth getting. I really want to know. So yeah, let me know. But anyway, from Melt, I want the Gemini 1 and 2. They sell them in a bundle, and I just think that they go well together. The color stories are beautiful. Yeah, they're just ones that I want. I want the Melt Mary Jane. I think the color story is absolutely gorgeous. It looks gorgeous. That's what I want. I want the Smoke Sessions palette. The Smoke Sessions palette seems to be the one where the shimmers like come out of the pan, but it's still really pretty and I still really want it. The 420 palette, I mean, that looks like a really cool color story with those greens and just kind of like the grungy tones in that one. I really want that one. And then the Rust palette is another one. That one, I like the tones in that one. It's kind of like autumnal and warm tones, and it's just kind of my color story. I'm very versatile with my color story preferences. I like warm tones, I like cool tones, I like neutral, I like color. So take with that what you will. Cheese and Parties is another one I want from Melt. This one I really like the packaging on. It's just kind of classy and fun. And the color story is nice. I like the deep like plummy purples and just like the burgundy tones, burgundy tones, plummy tones. Yeah, I like that one. And then lastly is Millennial Pinks, which I know people had mixed opinions about, but I really like the color story of like the pinks with the, but I really like the color story with the pinks and the navy blue. I think those colors go together, but then also the grays. I think those colors look really good together, so that's why I want that palette. So yeah, those are all the palettes I want to try from Melt. That was 8 palettes. Moving on to Glamlite. So I had considered the Ice Cream Dream palette, but it's not really on my wish list. I'm still gonna put up a picture so people know, so you know what I'm talking about, but it's too big. I don't have space for it. All of my makeup, I mean, I'm gonna do a vanity tour at some point, but all of my makeup, my palettes and stuff fit in that drawer or my display, which I'm gonna show. Like, I have palettes on display there. So I don't have the space for just big, huge palettes, and this one is just too big. So that's why Ice Cream Dream isn't on there. And plus I can get the pastels that I would want from the Nomad Tokyo palette. So yeah, that one's not really on my list, but it was a strong consideration. So I have 3 palettes from Glamlite that are on, wow, the lighting, I'm sorry, the lighting has kind of changed. I have 3 palettes from Glamlite that are on my wish list. And so one of them is the Chocolate Martini. This is one, it's not too big. And I really like the color story. And I just like the tones of the browns. And I think there's like a blue in there. I like the color story of the Chocolate Martini palette. The Margarita palette makes me think of Misty and all of her watermelon looks. And I just like the palette. I think it's like a fun kind of small rainbow palette. So yeah, and then another rainbow palette would be the cake palette. So yeah, and that's another one where just a color story I like. I think it would be nice to have. Number 4 is Unearthly Cosmetics, previously called Alien Cosmetics, and from them I want to try them because I hear really good things about the formula, and a lot of their packaging I really like, but there are a lot of color stories that kind of seem disjointed to me from them. So I still want them, kind of, but I also I look at the palette and then I feel like I would not know what to do with the palette. So I don't know how much use I would get out of the palettes, but I tend to use my palettes in conjunction with other palettes, so I think I would get use out of them still. But yeah, some of their palettes are like the color stories are just like a little bit off to me. So I needed to close my curtains because the lighting was getting a little bit too distracting, so that's why the lighting has changed. But anyway, so Lure is one I want to try from them. This is one I've heard a lot of people talk about being like one of their best palette. So it's not like the best color story in my opinion, and I don't really care for the packaging, but I just heard a lot of good things about that palette, and people say like they've done some of their favorite looks with that palette. So yeah, it's definitely one that is on my wish list. The Hauntingly Glamorous palette, I love the packaging on this one. The color story, not as much, but I think it's workable. And I mean, I think I could definitely like mix it in with other palettes, but the packaging, it speaks to me. I just like the packaging. So the Poison Apple, again, great packaging in my opinion. It's probably not for everyone, but I really like the packaging on the Poison Apple. And I watched a video of Chic Geek using that palette, and she did a really pretty look. So yeah, I would want to get that one as well. The Not Normal palette, again, I really like the packaging. I like the color story overall. I do think the color story is a little bit disjointed, but I think it's definitely workable, and again, I can mix it with other palettes. So yeah, that's one that's on my wish list. The Fall Magic, this one is more for the color story than the packaging, because the packaging is, I mean, it's cute, it's leaves, but the color story is pretty. There's like a purple and a teal, and I like the whole theme of the fall, and it just looks like a pretty color story, so that's one I would want to get from them. Okay, so moving on to number 3, and we're getting into palettes that I actually intend on purchasing. So I intend on purchasing these 2 palettes from Fantasy Cosmetica, the Druid, and these are the only palettes that they have, and one of them hasn't even been released yet, but by the time I get around to purchasing it, obviously it'll be released. But the Druid palette, the tones are really pretty, and it's kind of a grungy color story that seems really workable, so, and with really great shimmers. And I have just heard people rave about this brand. Like, I haven't heard anything negative about their palette, this palette. So, and it's their first palette. If the Sorcerer palette, which hasn't been released yet, gets good reviews, like people try it and they like it, I will definitely 100% get that palette along with the Druid palette. I do intend on getting these palettes. I won't get the Sorcerer palette if I hear that it's not a good formula. But as of right now, I intend on getting it. And then number 2 is Adept. Oh, I can thank Brittany Ray Beauty for this. I mean, a lot of people rave about this palette, or rave about Adept Cosmetics, but Brittany is the reason that it's as high up on my wish list as it is. So the palettes that I want from Adept have nothing to do with the packaging, and it's all about the color story. And the formula, I mean, it's actually more about the formula than the color story. I just think, so the Heather Austin palette would be one that I want from them for sure. I think it's Brittany's favorite palette in her whole collection. But it has a lot of pretty shifty shades, like really intense shimmers. And I heard the mattes are really good. I like the colors of the mattes. That's definitely one I would want to get from them. Another one is the Amulet palette. This one, I do really want to get, like, the shimmers are really pretty, but I don't know, I'm not sure about, because there's like a gray, a dark gray, and a dark blue, I think. I'm not as interested in the color story of the Amulet one, but then some of the shimmer shades in that palette are just so pretty. So yeah, it's definitely, I still want to get it. I think I want the Heather Austin one more. I'm not really sure actually. And then while I'm at it, I would just do the House of Elle and the Plain Jane remastered. They do it in a bundle. And Brittany has done some really pretty looks with the House of Elle palette, with the Heather Austin and the Amulet palette. She kind of mixes them all together sometimes. She just does a lot of really pretty looks with the house. And I think the House of Elle palette, like, it's, I just think it seems like a fun palette. And then the Plain Jane, like, because I could use them, I think it's all shimmers in the Plain Jane, but I can use them with any other palette, you know, so that's why I want that. So yeah, I basically just want all the palettes from Adept. So my number 1 palette has a lot to do with the packaging, and the packaging is the reason. I intend on getting it soon. It's going to be one of the next palettes that I get for sure. And it would be on my list of brands to try for sure, because I've only heard good things about this brand and the formula, and I do like the color story of this palette. So this would 100% be on my wish list. I just don't know if it would be number 1 if it wasn't for the one that if it wasn't for the packaging. And that is the, and it's probably gonna be, so it is the What's Up Beauty Desert Monsoon palette. And it's because I live in Arizona. They're an Arizona brand. The packaging is very Arizona. The first time I saw this Desert Monsoon palette, I was watching a video from Teresa's Dead, and she was talking about this palette and showing it and talking about, like, how it was a great palette. And I was thinking to myself, that looks a lot, that reminds me of Arizona. I don't even think she mentioned it was from Arizona, so before I even knew it was an Arizona brand, I wanted to get it. So yeah, that's why this palette is number 1 out of everything on this wish list. But I do really like the color story, and this would definitely be on my wish list just because I've only heard good things about this brand, and their palette is somewhat affordable. But also I can just go to the actual store and pick up this palette, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I think the color story is nice. I think it seems like a great neutral palette with some pops of color. If the Desert Monsoon palette didn't remind me so much of Arizona and make me want it for the packaging, then it would probably be at number 10, and then everything would be pushed down. So I don't know if that's cheating or not, but I mean, I don't know. I definitely think it's one I would get a lot of use out of, and I'm really excited to get it whenever I get it. So yeah, that's why it's number 1. It's my wish list, so that one's number 1 on my wish list. So those are the top 10 indie brands that I would want to try, and those are literally all the palettes that I would want to try from them. So I could see myself trying all 10 and just getting one palette from each brand. That seems realistic, but I thought it would just be more fun to talk about all of the palettes that caught my eye from the brand. So that's why I did it this way. But definitely let me know what you think about this series. If you've tried any of these brands, what your opinion is. If you would put brands higher up on my wish list that are lower. If you think that there's another indie brand that's better than these, just let me know. If, because I've only tried like the indie brands that I mentioned, which is not a lot, and like not as much as some people have. So definitely let me know if you've tried a lot of indie brands, what your thoughts are. Let me know what you think about this series. If you have any other suggestions about top 10 kind of things like wish list items or any other video suggestions. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't already. It would mean a lot to me, and definitely give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video.